Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Sivga P2 Pro open back planar headphones. Now, it's no secret that I'm a pretty big fan of Sivga because they have put out some great entry and mid-level sets like the Luan and the SV023. So of course, when the P2 Pro showed up, I admittedly got a little excited. That being said, while I am fully aware of my biases, as usual, I did try my best to approach this review as objectively as possible. And I think I have a pretty good idea of where the P2 Pro stands, not only in terms of its general sound performance, but also how it stacks up against some of the competition out there as well. So as usual, we will go over the specifications and design, and then we'll jump into the sound. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So the P2 Pro is priced at $450, and it uses a planar driver with an open back design. And again, with the SV023 and the Luan, Sivga got a lot of things right, but a few things that really stood out to me and thoroughly impressed me about those two sets were their general build quality, the design, and their fairly high level of comfort. And the P2 Pro is absolutely no exception. The combination of the metal and the red oak is simply beautiful, and there's really nothing about the design that I don't like, but as impressive is its level of comfort. And again, these are attributes that seem to be consistent throughout their whole product line, the Luan probably being the most comfortable, at least in my opinion, but the SV023 and now the P2 Pro are very, very comfortable as well. Now, the P2 Pro is maybe a little heavier. I think it's around 435 grams, and you can see that they used a very soft velvet-like material on the inside of the pads that feel really nice against the skin, and the headband is also very soft as well. And again, despite the small amount of added weight, it's probably still one of the more comfortable sets that I've tried in this price range. So the use of materials and just the general build quality is excellent. I love the design, and it's very, very comfortable. Again, all things that Sivga really consistently, I think, pays very close attention to, and they also consistently just simply kill it. But what about the sound? Well, they killed that too. So let's talk about that. So the build and design of the P2 Pro is excellent. Sivga just nailed it with that. But what about the sound? Well, I'm not maybe quite ready to declare it the best headphone I've ever heard under 500, but of the sets that I have owned or tried, like the HD600, the Sundara, Ananda Nano, Edition XS, Zeus Elite, Sivga's own SV023, and many others, the P2 Pro can easily hold its own when compared with some of those. But let's do a quick sound breakdown and I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So as far as the P2 Pro's sound signature, it definitely lands within that neutral range, but its overall presentation strikes me as being more mid-centric. Now, it's definitely not lacking or shy in the bass department. However, its energy is going to be maybe slightly shifted away from the bass or the lower half of the tuning, and it's going to be more focused or centered around the upper mids and lower treble. But again, its overall presentation is still what I would consider to be well balanced, and it's also pretty natural sounding as well. It's not the most natural set out there, but the thing is, unless I was doing like a direct side-by-side comparison with some of my higher end sets like the HD 800S, it wasn't something that really stood out or became a distraction. Again, that's an isolation, and I will talk more about that later. But in a nutshell, when I'm listening to the P2 Pro, the standout characteristics for me are that it's decently resolving, it sounds neutral and for the most part flat, but it does also render vocals and instruments fairly naturally. And that neutral presentation is, again, it's evident also in the way that the bass is presented as far as the bass energy. So the bass levels are going to be maybe, I don't know if I would say polite, but to me, the overall bass presentation, I think, is more focused on accuracy and less on excitement and fun. So it does offer a sufficient amount of dynamics and slam, but the goal here, I think, seems to be more focused around, again, naturalness and accuracy, which the P2 Pro does achieve that goal in my opinion. And then another area I feel that was handled very well was in that transition out of the bass into the lower mids, because it seems to be controlled and there's really good separation and distinction between the bass and the mids. And what I mean by that is there's no perceivable bass bleeding into the mids, resulting in not only a fairly textured and detailed mid bass and low mid presentation, but also a fairly detailed and resolving mid range as well. It's maybe not the most detailed mid range that I've heard under $500, but it's more than adequate. And what I mean by that is that it can at times maybe edge just a little towards sounding veiled or maybe just a little imprecise, I guess, for lack of a better word. But what it does do quite well is render vocals and instruments naturally, again, for this price point, albeit maybe a little more mid-forward. So the mid-range may not be the most resolving, but there isn't really anything about it that sounds distracting or incorrect or unnatural in isolation. And I'm okay with that at this price point. Now, I should point out that when I started doing comparisons with some of my more natural sets, I did notice just a small amount of, and I hate using this term, but at times it did sound just a little honky in the upper mids. Although again, in isolation, I barely noticed it. But that's why I describe it as being fairly natural sounding. And again, I would describe this as a more mid-centric tuning. So it's going to put vocals a little more up front and center and maybe a little closer to the listener. And then as far as the treble presentation, it is also fairly natural sounding. It's definitely resolving and pretty detailed for this price point. But the treble presentation, I feel, is more focused on the lower treble. And while it does have upper treble extension, the upper treble presentation seems to be a little more rounded or maybe smoothed when compared to the amount of lower treble energy. That's not to say there isn't adequate air or micro nuances, because I do think it brings that out sufficiently, but honestly, I would have preferred maybe just a little bit more. Now, as far as its technical performance, I would say it's decent. As far as its ability to render details, I would also consider the soundstage to be decently wide, definitely wide enough to give a nice sense of left to right space or openness, and also avoid sounding congested or overly intimate. However, I would say that it does push vocals and some instruments a little closer to the listener in the mix, which is good as far as them keeping the listener's focus and them maintaining a strong center image. However, because of that, there isn't a very strong sense of forward depth. But again, you do have nice left to right width, and you also have decent imaging as far as being able to place the instruments within the sound field. Now, as far as comparisons, as far as the P2 Pro's overall performance, so this is taking into account both tuning and technical performance, one of the best performing full-size headphones I've ever heard around this price point is the Ananda Nano. And in my opinion, I just don't think this really can compete with that. And I also don't think it's as detailed as the HD6XX or the Edition XS, although I do prefer the upper mid presentation of the P2 Pro, maybe just slightly over the 6XX. But generally speaking, I do think the HD6XX is the overall better performer, as is the Edition XS. But those are also some of the best headphones out there within this price range, at least that I've owned or heard. Now, I would say that the P2 Pro is about on par with the SV023, which is another great set by Sivga. I also prefer the tuning of the P2 Pro over the FT3, the FIO FT3, the Zeus Elite, the Poseidon. And again, all of those are really good sets for this price range, but I would actually probably take the P2 Pro over all of those sets because to me, it offers an even more natural presentation while also bringing really good technical performance, not to mention the design and comfort are up there with the best, again, within this price range. So no, it's not the best within the $400 to $500 price range, but its performance is still very good for this price point. And in my opinion, it still pushes very close to some of the best out there, close enough that I would definitely feel confident in giving this a pretty strong recommendation, especially if you are a vocal lover and you love a more vocal forward presentation. So that concludes my review of the Sivga P2 Pro. If you are new to the Giz Audio channel and you like our videos, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll be sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. Please comment on this video. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.